Okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to be pretty fast, but I wanted to come on because I'm super excited about getting through the third hub and these techniques and exercises. And for me personally, as the third hub is showing up in my own practice, I would like to personally benefit from reviewing this stuff and reading through it. So, for right now, let me just mess around a little bit. Okay, got this. So, here we are. We're on page. So, all right, I'm getting my act together. Page 147, and yeah, so it's super humid, even though here in Boston right now, even though the AC is like on full blast, the middle of July. And I was just kind of like shuffling around, getting things ready for our guest who's arriving. And then also, I received some pictures of the book in Bali, and that's really fun. So if you follow me on Instagram, at the Parinama Method, you can see those pictures. I posted them up. So anyhow, all right. So we're moving into techniques and exercises, and probably right now is a good time to just refresh on the order of operations, which is that we're learning about each of these individual facets of ourselves, and we're approaching them separately. And people sometimes ask about how they intermix, but it's kind of like arithmetic in a way. Like it's like the sequence of, maybe order of operations, but also like a sequence of working towards increasingly complex like arrangements of things and solving for things, is first understanding really what the individual components are to a certain extent. And even the exploration within a given hub lends to understanding of the other hubs. So it's like the more that we practice in it, the more we spend time working in it and introspecting and using the things that arise in our own lives to process through this, the more rich this becomes. But just as a reminder, when we're looking at this, it's like, first of all, we have the tangle, previously called the hairball, which is that our early events, our experiences and circumstances really shape the reflexes, as they relate to, any given hub. And those reflexes, we attach belief systems, we rationalize the reflex with a belief around why it exists or what part of our identity is, and that becomes reality. And that reality we reflect out into the world, and the world responds to it, and then it kind of like creates this sort of tangle that tightens and tightens over time as it continues to validate itself. And so what we're doing here is so the 7 different facets we're exploring in terms of the suite of reflexes that are formed. And so we've just done the learning, which is the initial development, the basics and the themes, is like understanding like what the hub is comprised of. And then it's understanding the interruptions and stressors, like the nature of the types of events that impact the development of a hub. And it's certainly not exhaustive. Certainly not exhaustive. And then it's knowing the adaptations and the holding patterns. So this is where we can see the evidence of the shaping in the existing patterns that we have, and also the exploration of the shadow there, and some of the, like in writing the book, there's definitely a bit of exploration of certain aspects of the of the adaptations that are explored, but once again, not exhaustive. And now what we're moving into is what is kind of the expansion and the practice around this, which is understanding how to develop the hub. Because in some cases, like in this, like actually in all of the hubs, their capacity is small, so they don't burn as bright as they can because they are a bit underdeveloped. So we're creating those senses, and then also we're working with kind of like the sort of I call it trapped, but it's sort of like, you know, adaptations, working with them. So and we're processing it. But this is where we're speaking to ourselves, to this component, this facet of ourselves rather, and we're speaking to it in the language that it was coded in, which is like a sensory language, like the body somatics. It's like where we find this stuff, where it arises, where, for folks who've had releases in yoga practices, it just, you can actually find these releases without uniting the logic, without uniting the emotion. You can actually get into the reflexes, which is what happens when you have a somatic release in yoga. But the thing with that is, if it's not connected to understanding the cognitive aspect to it, and if it's not connected to understanding the feeling component, um, it can really remain as an isolated experience and also not really well understood. So in the techniques and exercises, we're getting into this, the part of like where we begin to actually, let's see how to describe it. I guess to a point, I guess it's like we're working with like the reflex and the feeling component, because it's like we've done a lot with the cognitive, and now we're really working with, so it's kind of like our level of consciousness and cognition right now, we're talking with, and we're almost like enrolling it to make it not step out in front of attempts that we make to actually make this more dynamic. So it's almost like enrolling everybody, all the different, the triunal brain. It's like we're letting everyone know there's no threat here. This is actually for the betterment of the entire like overall experience. So now, once there's enough of like cognitive grasp on this, then we go into the practices, and in the practices, this is where we begin to feel. And I will say, and this is, certainly now happening to others, but one of my first initial experiences with this parinama as a practice, as a yoga practice, this had certainly happened to me, where I'd had the direct experiences with the somatic releases and had a dawning sense of what they were connected with, and increasingly began to use my yoga practice to be able to expand, aspects like these facets in my life, specifically as they're related to power and making money and love, less so with emotion and physical security. But my first experience was actually with, in my intimate partnership, my relationship, where when I started doing, like, really yoking these practices together, I just started showing up differently, and it wasn't a choice. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was kind of like, it wasn't like, like I'm like wondering whether I should tell this story. The mm, yeah, I'll soften it. Or I'll so one of the dynamics in this relationship was that I was very like, so it was that I really focused on making him really happy. And there was kind of a dynamic where like he held the majority, like it was like we did what he wanted to do. And wow, it is raining out right now. Boring. And when I started doing these practices, it was like I had this knowing and this sense that this was something that I didn't want to have I wanted to have more of a say. I wanted to be more cherished. I wanted to be more appreciated. I want to be more respected. And it just arose. Like I just started showing up naturally. And one time I was cooking dinner and I just made a request. I said, when you come to dinner, I want you to bring me something, a leaf from outside, or draw me a little picture, or do something. So I'm about to go spend a couple hours preparing a meal for you. I'd like you to, just reciprocate this act of love. So, and it was a shocking moment. It's a shocking moment in the relationship. Yeah, but this could. Yeah. Yeah, because if I had actually rationally constructed that action, I wouldn't have done it. But it just rose. I just said this is what I'd like because I was just in like integrity. It like cleared the way somehow, and it was like boop, and the ask just came out. I remember being like, "Oh, this is really powerful stuff," because it's kind of like the warring, this kind of thing about like, no, I actually know how to run this situation, and where there's like actually a, call it divine or naturally occurring or whatever, like universe, God, whatever, it's naturally flowing, and that it's like interfering with it is what causes all this pain in life. It's like I know how to do this, and it's like awful all the time. It's like because it's like I need to keep, I need this for whatever, you know, and doesn't the unwinding of the loosening of the tangle is not, sometimes it's like like it's profoundly graceful and it feels like relief, and other times it's really painful. And the more and I'm not going to say like it gets more, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to always have that feeling of like that feels like true. It's actually sometimes it's going to feel like you're going to get a little bit of you probably already know this, release, and then there can be like fear because it's realizing that certain things that feel like they're load bearing beams in our identity and our lives are now being compromised, and that things will get harder, and if we're already tired, we're already worn down from the conditions of our lives being, fill in the blank there. So yeah, thing. Okay, so I'm going to read through this. There's not a lot, and we're going to this is kind of an introduction. So, okay. So I want to show this here at the top. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. I'm going to pull it all the way through here. Wow, it's still really small in that format. Hi. Yeah, that's not going to get the job done. Well, okay, so I will point out that on page 147 of the book, each of the techniques and exercises has a prompt section at the opening of the section. So as you see here, and we'll do a callback. I'll pull up as a reminder, chapter, boy, I can find it's really easy to find threads. Here we go. So this is the second hub. And the point of these is really about like where it's kind of like an attempt at like pointing to where the feeling is, and like it's like, okay, how to kind of find it. So one thing, and it's so interesting in terms of the exploration of it, is it's like the more that you kind of are in the world and watching and having your own experience and having your own feelings, that you just start to see things and even refine one's own understanding of this. So one of the things is gaze forward. So it's not, this is like actually where you're going into like upper hubs, and this is where you're like going into lower hubs. Yeah, and it's like this is third hub. Gaze is forward. The other is push through your feet and uncrimp your torso upward. A really, really important fundamental in the somatics of this is being able to like physically connect the relationship with the ground with power. That a solid foundation, when we push into it, rises us up. And that is something where it's like you can talk about it, but to feel it in your body, to be like, when I push down, I rise up, like to feel that, and that's in yoga, that's considered, like prana and apana, and that is a lot of times, at least in the yoga that I've been, exposed to, or like the kind of thinking of it in the West has been the prana, prana, prana. It's like energy, 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 upward movement and everything. But the counter and almost the yin and yang is the like apana, which is the like the equal and opposing force, like downward. And that if you're just a rocket blasting off into space with like prana, it's actually like there's an emergent property of the power of uniting both of these components, which is like the grounding that it actually it's like it's kind of like bandhas in a sense, and this might be a little too esoteric, but it's like finding these things where you're not using like muscular holding, where you're actually finding this kind of like natural balance in this that actually just kind of exists when you place the consciousness and the action in the right places. So pushing through the feet, uncrimp the torso upwards. So this is something with like, for me, I have this where this cut like actually like blocks energy for me. So when I can like feel it's like very like the tendency to try to hide my power. And use breath to extend the torso in all directions. So one of the exercises that is not in the book, at least I don't think it is, or maybe it is, we'll see. It's been a minute. Is actually, I think it is if you have a yoga belt, especially if it has the little D-ring things where you can actually just loosely tighten it around your midsection, like right kind of where a bra strap would go for those who wear them, and breathe in a 360 where you're extending in all directions. So it's not like with a breathing where it's like the stomach is out, it's like it's literally breathing in all directions and feeling that kind of expansion. We have a visitor here. A friendly visitor is here to be very nice and adorable. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of reading here, and I'll leave that up. Why not? It's cute. All right, so the Parinoma Method third hub fundamentals. The physical domain of this hub is your torso, posture, and musculature. In the third hub, we have a crucible in which transformation takes place, the digestive system, which converts food into energy. Building strength in our body gives us the capacity to stand up and stand tall for our integrity, even when the critics chime in. And if you're interesting, they always do. It's a fact. Oh my God, it's a fact. Whew. Okay, in the first hub, we reclaim the relationship with resting and nourishing our body. Sorry, it's still funny. It's still funny. All right. The second hub introduces flowing movement, which, along with emotional responsiveness and literacy, counterbalance the inertia of rest. The second hub moves for pleasure and curiosity, while third hub movement is focused and purpose driven in the service of results and transformation. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of full circle back to how these two like facets interact with each other is that the feelings of the second hub when they are uncontained and even like sort of outside of our consciousness where it's like yeah this is just who I am or whatever when we're not really like regulating actively the anger and the frustrations are like very second hub and can be like flowing and taking up tons of space. I mean it can move up here too but yeah yeah Yeah, I'm experiencing that right now. So reclaiming the third hub can be complex and difficult because a relationship with our power is so taboo that it runs laps around sexual and other stigmas. It's also the most challenging hub to reclaim because it contains aspects of ourself that we've pushed into the shadows that can become suppressed and when activated, combustible. Yeah, one of the things when getting into the third hub is like it can be, I don't know if you have like a pressure cooker or an Instapot. It's kind of like all of a sudden the pressure starts coming out, and that can be kind of like, oh my God, but it stops. It doesn't go on forever. And I think one of the things is having a constructive outlet for it and consciousness. So consciousness and accountability. You know? Okay. So as toddlers and throughout life, we're socialized to be manageable for others, and many potent insults involve slurs directed at third hub attributes. Selfish, egotistical, and aggressive, to cite a few. Your ability to stand on your own, consciously reclaiming some of that assertive toddler energy, makes you a more decisive leader and a better friend and partner. So, muscular holding patterns take energy to establish and maintain. The techniques and exercises in this hub open us to accessing blocked energy. There are often surprising outcomes from embodying power, such as taking self advocacy action in relationships or delighting in uncovering our naturally occurring willpower. Some folks talk about having unprecedented confidence in job interviews and meetings after focusing on the practice of this hub. Shifts in it can be the fastest and most astonishing. That is a fact. Oh my gosh. I will say this is an area that I have worked with people on now for probably the longest. Um, yeah, for probably the longest. And this is an area where with the physicality of this, that folks can actually provide shifts, like create shifts that happen almost instantaneously. So with that said, I'm going to sign off for now. My friend, I believe, is close by, and this means that I must take off for now. So anyhow, I will say let's see, what is there as I'm kind of wrapping this up here. Um, mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I think one of the things is like with this like up and straightforward and also back to the physical practices of power that the head doesn't move, the eyes are forward, and that we're actually just, like upright. One of the things too in terms of like adaptive holding pet like adaptations is that for people who are inflating, sometimes you'll see what's called the bully belly, which is like kind of a larger stomach. But another like adaptation that's fit like physical manifestation of inflating in the third hub is very taut upright posture. It's like somebody that's very lean. It doesn't have any kind of like, it's like very taut upright posture, like with no movement in it. It's just like. So anyway, so for one's own practice, I think one of the things with this is the consciousness and compassion around it, realizing that it can feel, like if you are releasing an Instapot, for me at least, when I'm releasing rice, I'm like, when's this going to end? Where the pressure, the air is coming out, and it's like, oh my God, it's just like, shh, you want to eat your rice, and it's like, this is going to be, it takes a while. Um, yeah. But yeah, it's kind of, I think the thing is, as long as we're conscious of what we're doing and taking accountability and responsibility for when we do happen to impact people with like intense voltage as it relates to expressing the intensity and the of this, it's good. And also just kind of when it's building too much momentum and it's getting too much, just slow down. All right. So sending you lots of love. I can't wait for next time. Bye for now. Bye.